Greetings and salutations, everyone. I do hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live or however you choose to read your clock this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. Folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. With that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Shall we?
Today's first subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I had something happen tonight and I just had to share it. I called my son and talked to him, but he really couldn't talk much because he was driving home to Oklahoma from Idaho with my two granddaughters. You know, I listened to your show and haven't had any experiences with Dogman or werewolf. Here's what happened tonight. 9:12 Central Time. Oh, I can't really talk about it verbally at this point because it scared me so badly. I can't speak about it coherently. I'm at work, it's 9 p.m. and I drive around and check all the turbines to make sure the gates are closed so the cows don't get out. I have to write down the time every time I scan one of the gate tags. That's how I know what time it was when this happened. Anyway, I pull up to Turbine 7 and I can't pull all the way up to the gate to scan the tag. I gotta park and walk up to it. I scanned the tag and got the feeling like I was being watched. I looked to my left and saw a shape, a very large one. The first millisecond of seeing it, I thought it was a tree, but just as I quickly realized there were no trees. It's flat pastureland. So I looked a little closer and saw the outline of a body. I saw the massive upper body shape, wide chest, incredibly huge shoulders, and then I turned and ran back to the truck and locked the door. I tried to haul tail, but I had to back out, and I suck at backing out, and I sure was not getting the truck stuck here. I didn't see any eye shine. I didn't even see its face. When it hit me what I was seeing, I stopped looking and ran. I was afraid to see the face, so I just stopped looking and ran. This thing was black. It was pitch black out here, and the black shape of this was darker black. Crazy that black could be darker than black already is, but it was darker. And it freaked me out. I didn't see a tail, I didn't see its head or face, but it was facing me. I could tell that from what I did see, at best guess. I did see it was at least 7 to 8 feet tall, and I was maybe 30 yards from it. I didn't get off of work until 6 a.m. I'm locked inside the truck and wishing desperately that I was at home. I post at the maintenance yard but drive once an hour to the substation. The turbines are all over the countryside out here. I have to check them once a night. Turbine 7 is the closest one to the maintenance yard, about a mile away. I saw that thing about a mile down the road from where I am right now, and it really terrifies me. I cannot stop shaking, and when I was trying to talk to my son, I was stuttering. Couldn't get words out. I cannot stop shaking, which is probably why my head hurts so bad right now. Part of me wanted to park the work truck and get in my truck and just drive home. Screw this job type thing. But I can't do that to my coworker. He would never get a day off because we are the only 2 officers that work out here. I just had to share this with you, hoping that telling it would calm my nerves, but so far it has not. I'm off for the next couple of nights. Probably gonna look at another job because I'm too scared to work out here now. Same sub, second email. Hey Jeff, I sent you a message about Brown Springs, Oklahoma a week or so ago. This one doesn't really have anything to do with Brown Springs, but it's stuff that has happened to me since I've been living in Oklahoma less than a year. I work as a surveillance officer at WinStar World Casino. I work from 3 to 11 p.m. I drove down the Highway 77 on my route. It's a highway, but not a well-used one. Especially when I'm coming home. There are homes sporadically along the highway, but no streetlights. One night I saw this really large dog. It was white and on all fours. It was taller than a mailbox. I know this because it was near one. As I drove past it, it watched me. And as I got beyond it, I looked in my rear view, and it had turned and was still watching me. I honestly don't remember seeing any eye shine, but I was looking at its size. It gave me chills and set my nerves on end. When I got home, I was getting out of the truck to go inside, and panic took over. I ran to the door, fumbling with my keys. I had no idea why I felt like that, but I felt like I was going to get grabbed from behind if I did not get inside quickly. I need to explain that I live 15 miles north of WinStar, and I saw this dog about halfway home. Okay, anyway, the Love County Wildlife Management area is really close to me as well. I smoke, but I don't smoke in my house. I go on the front porch. I live in a neighborhood, but I'm on the last street, and there is a pasture with 2 horses and a donkey across the street from me, and another pastureland beyond. Somewhere in another pasture are some cows. I hear them, but I haven't seen any. Back to the night I saw the dog. After that, I started getting scared when I went outside to smoke cigarettes. I don't know why. One night, I was on the phone with my son. He lives in Dallas, and we hear coyotes. They were loud, and they were very close. I call them coyotes, but my son told me to get back in the house because they didn't sound right, and he was afraid of me staying on the porch. I finally went in because he was almost panicked and kept telling him that they're just coyotes and wouldn't come on the property. His panicking finally made me go in. He is usually a calm person, and this is completely out of character for him. Then last week I'm on the front porch smoking again. It's midnight and I hear a cow being slaughtered. That's what it sounded like, and I wish I had not heard it. It was horrible, and it wouldn't leave my head. I've never heard such as a cow screaming, and I could hear the coyotes start up again. I heard the cow moaning as the coyotes are going off, but then towards the end I heard something like a monkey, and it freaked me out. Maybe it was the coyote call as it trailed off, I don't know. But I got up quickly and went back inside. I was so scared. I thought, man, if those coyotes took a cow down, I'm a lot smaller. It'd be a lot easier for them to take me out. My husband spends most of his time in Dallas because he works there. He was not here when this happened. When I told him, he said coyotes would not come after me and kind of blew it off. And because he blew my concern off so easily, I didn't tell him about whatever hit the outside of the house the night after the cow incident. I live in a pier and beam home, so it's elevated, and whatever hit the home made it shake. Again, I got scared and was too scared to move. I don't have any weapons. I don't have a problem with guns. I'm just not comfortable handling one myself. So I have nothing. A kitchen knife, that's it. All this is going back to that big white dog thing that watched me as I drove past. I'm now wondering if maybe that wasn't a dog, if it was a Dogman and it followed me home. I'm looking for another place to move to. I'm originally from Texas and thinking going back. Tonight's second Oklahoma Dogman subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, where do I start? My name is Jay and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My encounter happened back in 2006. I was 17 going on 18 at the time. It was my ex, her brother, and I. It was in the summertime, I want to say around June. It was around 2:30 in the morning and we were just driving around all night since we didn't have anything to do. We were driving on some type of back street. I know it was around the port of Carusa area because that's around the area we ended up at. Well, enough with that. So, as we're driving on the street, there are no cars or any lighting around the area. I was driving and noticed on the right-hand side of the street a huge black animal. At the time, it seemed like a big black dog. The strangest part was it was keeping up to the speed right next to me. I was going at least 50. As I've seen that it started getting ahead of me, I turned on my brights where I saw this big type animal start turning into a human type man. As it shifted to a human form, it jumped and disappeared. But let me explain how quick it happened, that I was barely able to tell what it was. Dark black, like a dark shadow, you can say. I couldn't make out the face or any type of facial features. Now on with where it disappeared. The street where I was driving down ended where you'd have to turn left on a curve. So as I'm driving, I hit the left curve, and that's where the thing disappeared. I thought I was tripping, so I didn't say anything, but then my ex, who was in the back seat, out of nowhere, hugged me and freaked out. Then my ex's brother in the passenger side, shocked, and says, "What the hell was that?" Quickly, I turned the car around and headed toward the curve where the thing had disappeared. As crazy as it was, understand that that curve has a large rock structure. To be able to jump and get to the top, you would need to jump at least 6 feet in the air or more. Now, as a crazy teenager, as I was, I turned on my brights to get down from the car and looked around to see where the thing could have gone. But never saw anything or any way how it could have disappeared. I hope my story wasn't too confusing and hope to hear more stories on your channel. Today's third Oklahoma subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I apologize this has taken me so long to get back to you about these encounters, but like you know and understand, a lot's been going on lately. Add that with a couple of deaths in the family, and finally here we are. Please feel free to edit where necessary. My name is John, and to start off with my mom's Dogman encounter. First of all, you should know my grandparents were divorced, so my mom chose to live with my granddad in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My grandfather never cared for neighbors within a close proximity, so he always lived in the outskirts or fringes of the town, if not straight in the middle of nowhere. It was one summer while my mom was living with him in Tulsa that her stepsister, Linda, from my grandmother's new marriage, came to stay with my mom and my granddad for the summer. Well, one night, as my mom and Linda were getting ready for bed, they both got a very uneasy feeling that they could not shake. I remember my mom saying you could feel something very sinister, and just straight gave her the heebie-jeebies. Linda as well. They both decided to crawl into my mother's bed, and were still feeling utter despair and chilled to their core, asking each other what the feeling was about. Neither one of them could put a finger on it, but as my mom turned to Linda once more to comment more about it, she looked upon Linda's face with her eyes locked on the window of my mother's room at the foot of their bed, with no color in Linda's face and the most terrified look she had ever seen. And right at that moment, Linda screamed a blood-curdling scream at the top of her lungs. My mom had turned her head to look at the window when Linda was fixated on, and my mother had seen, to her absolute confusion, 2 glowing red eyes peering in at them from the window. My mom could make out a dog about and 2 rows of sharp teeth. She said one of the things she'll never forget is that both top and bottom rows of the teeth were completely sharp. no cuspids, bicuspids, and so on. This creature also was sneering at them as well as emitting a low guttural growl, and what made my mom think at first was a demon because she had seen what looked like two horns on the top of its head, but when it laid its horns back, she came to realize they were ears and not horns. My grandfather came busting into the room with a 12 gauge full of slugs and exclaimed, "What is it? What the hell is it?" My mother and Linda told him what they had seen. My grandfather flew out of the house with a shotgun, not asking another question. However, by the time he got out to my mother's window, the beast had fled back into the nearby woods of my grandfather's property. My mom and Aunt Linda were traumatized, as you can imagine, and spent the rest of the summer at my grandfather's sleeping on the living room couch. Next is not a Dogman encounter really, but in some ways, as you'll hear, even more terrifying and disturbing. This happened to me. I was 7 years old, and it too was during the summer break. And I went to California to visit my Aunt Charlotte. She had a restaurant connected to the guest house along a beautiful river that connected to the Sequoia National Park. We all stayed in the guest house of the restaurant, and on the porch of this house were a few appliances to the restaurant and a huge, never seen anything before like it, timber wolf chained to the railing of the porch. The wolf and I got along just fine every day, but one day I made the horrible, life-changing mistake. I was on the porch next to the wolf, and it seemed to be either chewing on a bone or its leg or some other body part. I had bent down and stroked the wolf along its back, and the next thing I knew, I'm coming in, I was knocked unconscious for a brief moment. When I opened my right eye, for some reason, I couldn't open my left eye. All I could see were flashes of bloody canines and splatters of blood and flesh being ripped from my face. When I came to the realization I was essentially having my face being eaten off by a timber wolf, I fought with everything I had, but to no avail, as my little 7-year-old body was no match for the strength and tenacity of this creature. Fortunately, I had already gone into shock, so I believe it, or not at no time did I feel any pain whatsoever. So that's kind of weird, my face being mauled and all. The creature had me pinned up against 2x2 two CO2 tanks that belonged to the restaurant, and my sperm donor bio-dad heard the commotion, came outside along with my uncle, and beat the wolf off me. They picked me up and brought me inside the house, where I had taken a look at my mother, and the expression of horror on my mother's face, along with the plate she had dropped to the floor, told me I was in bad shape. Next to my mother was a hutch, and on the back was a tiled mirror, where I got a good look at myself, and I couldn't believe that it was me I was looking at. It was so surreal, like I was in a never-ending nightmare horror movie as one of the werewolf victims. But this was no special effects job I was looking at. It was my grotesque, disfigured, ripped-apart face. I couldn't even recognize myself. My bio-dad rushed me to the hospital, where I had my face sewn back together. My left eye was swollen shut for about a month, and that whole time never knowing if it had gotten my eye as well. Honestly, it seemed the least of my worries at the time, so I never asked. For the next school year, I was horribly taunted, picked on, treated like a freak because of my disfigurement, and to add insult to injury, it happened to be the same year Al Pacino's Scarface came out in the theaters. You can guess what my name I had adopted that year obviously was. Finally, the following year, I was able to get reconstructive plastic surgery on my face, and after several months of rubbing cocoa butter on the scars, you could hardly tell I was mauled. But honestly, Jeff, at that time, what makes this particular mauling by this particular animal even more disturbing is that this timber wolf looks exactly like what has been described so many times by people who have encountered a Dogman describes. to the T-minus walking bipedally and having hands, of course, but I can't help for a lot of these descriptions stir around my PTSD when they described what attacked me so many years ago. Thank you for your time and letting me send you my encounters. Your beloved subscriber and fan, John. Today's fourth subscriber Oklahoma submission. Hey Jeff, my friend said that's fine with him. He doesn't have any internet or anything. Doesn't own a computer. His name is A. He's 47 years old. This happened in spring of 2011 in northeastern Oklahoma. They call this area of Oklahoma Green Country. He doesn't want to give out the specific town name. I called to read him what my comment to make sure I didn't leave any important details out. He said that I pretty much got everything in the comment just as it happened. He wanted to add that since this sighting, he and his wife hear strange screams or howls sometimes behind the house towards where the sighting occurred. He automatically thinks of this thing, but yeah, he said, go ahead, you're welcome to share his story. A is one of the most trustworthy persons I have ever known. He said that he was walking from his house to the lake with his fishing pole and some worms. The lake is about a half a mile from his house. He said when he got to the top of the hill, about halfway to the lake, he says he had seen something moving in the brush down below at the bottom of the hill off to the side of the trail. He walks about 20 feet into the brush and bramble. Something black was moving the brush around. He stopped at the top of the hill and quietly knelt down to watch it, because he said he could tell it was big the way it was moving all the brush and bramble around. He said he watched that brush move for about a minute or two, getting small glimpses of a huge black hairy animal. His initial thought was black bear, but they are rare in this part of Oklahoma. I've lived in Oklahoma my entire life, and I've never seen a bear in the wild here, and neither has he. Anyway, he said he watched it move around in there for a few minutes, and he saw a rabbit dart across the trail coming from the other side of whatever this thing was. And he said that's when this thing tore through the bramble after the rabbit crossing the trail. He said this thing was on 2 feet running out of the brush after that rabbit. And when it hits the opening of the trail, he got a quick glance at it. And it went running off into the other side of the trail, hauling ass after that hare. Said it scared him how big and fast and strong the thing was, just ripping through all of that brush, small trees breaking limbs off as it went right through it all. He said the clear glance of this thing was only a second or two, but it was enough to see that it was not a bear and no normal creature. He said very clearly this thing was wolf-looking, running on its hind legs with very pointed ears. He noted the ears several times, saying they were very tall and pointy. It had its hands out in front of it while running, kind of hunched forward, long fingers, very dark black color. He said he estimates it to be about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. He said it was hunched forward, but if it stood straight up, it would be every bit of 8 feet. He listened to the smashing its way through the brush after that rabbit for a few seconds. After seeing it, he stood up, grabbed his fishing pole, and turned around, and quickly and quietly started for home. I asked him about the face, and he said he didn't get but a quick side view of the face, but he said it was undoubtedly a wolf head on a very tall, muscular man-type body. I believe every word this man has told me. Fished this spot his whole life, and he's never been back there after this. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing this. Tonight's fifth Dogman subscriber Oklahoma encounter. Hey Jeff, I've had 2 encounters. My first was brief, but here goes. My boss and I were driving at night in Pittsburgh County. We were going about 50 in a large tow truck and came upon a dead deer. Kneeling down by it was a huge black animal with pointed ears and huge white teeth. I told him to hit it, but by then we had passed it. My boss asked me, "Did you see that bear?" I said it had pointed ears. He looked over at me and said, You don't know what's out in those woods. My second encounter, these things really like looking in windows. About 2 weeks after my first, I went outside to smoke a cigarette. My backyard's fenced in, but I heard something run from the back of my fence like it was leaning up against it. I didn't think anything about it. I thought maybe it was a deer, so I hollered at it, waving my hands to try to scare it away. Damn thing charged at me. It charged for about 30 feet and stopped 5 feet from the fence. I couldn't move, I was so scared. I kept watching it. Then all of a sudden I see the woods part and something about 4 feet high, big and bulky. Large, broad shoulders lift its head up. This head must have been massive because all I could see was the amber glowing eyes looking at me, and the distance between the eyes was unreal. It didn't growl, it didn't show any signs of hostility other than charge me, but I think it was my fault. I think when I yelled and tried to scare it away, it took it as a challenge. I just bowed my head and walked toward the house. It hung out around the house for 3 or 4 weeks in the same area. I could hear it behind my fence. I stopped throwing food over the back of the fence and it stopped coming. I think it kept hanging around there because I threw food over the back of the fence. And it'll be about 60 to 70 feet from me. It wouldn't growl. It never attacked my little dogs, but my little dogs did not like going out there. They would cower. They didn't want to go. I think this must have been a juvenile because it didn't seem mean. I even thought about trying to feed it and get close enough to touch it, but then I thought, that's crazy. I'm not scared of death, but why invite it? Tonight's final Oklahoma subscriber submission. I was moving my belongings across the state and had just gotten pulled over in Krebs, Oklahoma. Speed trap worth avoiding for anyone who doesn't know. Great Italian food also. Anyway, I share that because it's the only time I got pulled over and got a ticket, so that date is my first Sasquatch sighting, and I don't even know what date it happened. It's around 3 in the morning. I had my puppy in the car. I was tired and anxious about arriving at our cabin near the Talimena Drive, about another 45 minutes away. So I was not super happy with the officer who pulled me over and gave me a ticket, considering there was no one on the road, and I didn't even notice the speed limit sign, and had been looking to make sure I wasn't speeding. By the time I got to my driveway, which is unmarked and surrounded by trees on the mountain highway, I was surprised I could even find it. It's a pretty steep slope with loose gravel and narrows as it crosses the Wet Weather Creek. This is shrouded in trees. Now, I have to tell myself here to give you some idea how terrifying this place has been at times. It feels like the darkness wants to swallow you, or at least reach out and grab you and tear you to shreds. So many nights I have actually climbed out my sunroof with a flashlight, checked all around as thoroughly as possible before climbing down and unlocking the gate. With a wooden log fence on either side, it's difficult to get back into the car in a hurry. I was on the edge and hyper vigilant most nights. There's no security lights. I don't like having those lights and wish they hadn't ruined the night sky with their stupid phone towers blinking nonstop. For a while, the newest one was literally a strobe light. Tell me that's not scary. We had a pair of mountain lions that frequented the property. Yes, a pair, perhaps a mother and an adolescent cub. And they liked being on the roof of the cabin and crossed paths with me twice. We have wolves, coyotes, mama bears with cubs, all kinds of critters. Interesting thing happened as I got there this particular early AM. I used the door, unlocked the gate with no problem, and was stunned by the thing I saw. Not even 5 yards away, I saw what appeared to be very much like a gorilla standing upright with long, shiny black hair reflecting my car brights. He was bothered and calm as he walked across from the fruit trees to the left, very muscular like King Kong. I watched in utter amazement as to what I was seeing, 100% believing without a question. Yeah, Bigfoot is real, and that is flesh and blood creature. In fact, this guy looked more like a gorilla than expected. It did not take him many strides before he vanished, before even reaching the creek on the far side. He was easily over 9 feet tall. I felt calm, unthreatened. It was an oddly comforting moment for me as a single mom alone in the woods where people go missing, and most believe it's these meth cook operations to blame. I was later considering that he was distracting me and leading me away from his family. I knew for a fact there were 3 from my first overnight visit to the cabin. The other 2 sounded female to me. This one has me scratching my head. I was running late for work for some appointment, trying to get my Bluetooth connected, so I stopped right outside of my gate. As I start to approach the wet weather creek, I saw what I first thought was a squirrel. Then it dawned on me that this thing was standing upright and running on 2 legs across the driveway. I looked more closely, and it had short arms. It was more an olive color and had the tail of a lizard. It swayed back and forth as this thing ran on its back legs across my driveway into the creek. I thought to myself, we don't have lizards like that. Wait, what kind of lizard was that? It reminded me of some things I had heard, and I did an unsuccessful internet search. I was driving on the highway not far from my driveway when I saw the same thing, or a different one. Again, my first thought was squirrel, but I went through the same process. That thing could take pretty long strides and never seemed too terribly fast for me to be able to see it all that well. And the tail, it swayed behind it, and something else. The head made me think of a dinosaur. After I saw this a second time, I actually asked my friend, who is a real estate agent and walks all these rural properties, to photograph, if he would keep his eye open and try to get it on camera. He has photographed little squatches in the trees on his family's property before. Those have lighter skin and human noses and faces, but they're covered in black hair on their heads and bodies. He lives pretty far out, not too terribly far from where they hold the annual Bigfoot Festival in Honubby, Oklahoma.
There you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed this early morning, middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.